May I call the chief guest and the panelists for today to come up on stage, and we'll have a small little book lunch, a little formality to be completed. So with this, I invite all the panelists, and over to you. Shall we start? My first question would be to the lawyers on this panel, Rama, Vaishali, Vivek. You all are out there battling the storm each and every day. And before we begin, I would like you to share your insights on how marriage as an institution has changed, before we get into the specifics of domestic violence and dowry.
Hello, good evening everyone. So, marriage as an institution has definitely changed over a period of time. One of the things that I observe in the cases that I handle is that most of the time the expectations that they have about each other or their role as husband and wife are not discussed. The fact that, premarital counseling should be made mandatory is not so. And it's not just about the couple. I think it also is about the family involved and the interference of the family involved, and who is influencing them to be in that marriage or not to be in that marriage is a bigger factor that I see. And I totally agree when you say that, I work a lot with couples to see if I can get them to settle it amicably. I tell them that it's an irreversible process most of the time, so if you want to try out all options to come together and sort out your differences, please do that, and only if you can't do that, let's try and settle it amicably. However, not all marriages end up settling amicably, and there is a huge legal battle. And even when they are settling it amicably, I wouldn't say that it is without trauma. Even when they are settling amicably, there is some amount of trauma, because nobody gets married with this thought that, we want to separate or we want to divorce. But there are circumstances that lead to it. And I totally agree that irretrievable breakdown has to be a ground, because I do see a lot of couples coming in saying, oh, my other partner is not agreeing for a mutual consent divorce, but I do not want to use a ground like cruelty against him or her, because there's no cruelty and it's just that this marriage is not working. But then we don't have that as a ground, and as lawyers we are left with no option but to look for the grounds that are available to us under the law. So it can be very distressing even for us, for them, and there are certain things that need to change with times, because relationships are changing, and I think we have to be aware of that fact and bring those changes in the interpretation.
Thank you, Rama, for setting the tone, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I think it's going to be a great book for all of us to read. I would like to bring in two perspectives. One, because I also specialize in online matrimonial frauds or online frauds, even if it comes to dating sites, and I see a lot of young people here, so perhaps of a little bit of relevance. But I think I would rather start by saying that equality is a very bookish definition, is what we see even in practice today. What it really means to be equal, it is not getting translated in practical scenarios. It is still, I think the mindset has to a large extent changed, that now the man in the house thinks that he needs to help or he needs to share an equal responsibility, but it is most of the times if he's told what to do. You know, there's a difference, right, of owning a responsibility and then actually doing something that has been told. And I realized it when I was having a conversation with a young friend. I was traveling back and I was asking her, कसं असतं का आता तुमच्या जनरेशनमध्ये? In our generation, you know, things were different, and we had, even if we were working, household roles were by default ours, and we were very happy if our husband sort of pitched in and were, you know, filled with gratitude because they did it for us. But how is it for you? So she said, I don't think things have really changed. And she said, I discovered it a little later, because she said, I used to tell my husband, put on the washing machine. So for a woman, it's a full cycle, right? You put the washing machine, you take the clothes inside the washing machine out, put it for drying, and after the cycle ends, you put those clothes also for drying, is what is meant to me by put on the washing machine. But for my husband, or even a young husband, for young couples, put on the washing machine is put in the clothes, put in the soap, and put the button on. It's done. So that equality is not the real equality, and I think that mindset change will drive in the complexities, maybe is some solution to the complexities that we see. And quickly, just to talk about matrimonial frauds online, unfortunately, they aren't even seen as matrimonial frauds because there is no domestic relationship. So Domestic Violence Act doesn't kick in. And if you go to the police, they are looked at as maybe financial violence or cheating or a financial fraud, and where the woman is devastated because of the emotional investment that she has made in a man online, not for a few months, sometimes these cases have gone on for years together. Thank you.
I would like to just say one thing, that the judicial system of our country definitely does not want any kind of breakups, any kind of this, and they're working very, very hard that each and every marriage is protected. So as we're discussing that breakup and this and that and this, that's the last resort. That's the last resort. So the judicial, because I work very closely with the judges, not only with the clients and with the district. So the approach of the highest judicial people, they are very clear that for India, marriage is sacrosanct. It's an institution, so we have to protect it. Come what may. Yes, we are growing, materialism is kicked in, those problems are there. So it's got to be a collective approach, how we have to look at this institution ahead in future. Let's discuss more points, and this is what I would like to say.
I have one question. We talked about equality. In a recent verdict, the Madras High Court ruled in favor of equal sharing of assets built during the duration of a marriage between a man and a woman. The fact that Indian law does not consider assets built during a marriage as belonging to both partners seems to be a little known fact. It is discovered usually in court, mostly by women, that he who owns the property, he who earns actually owns the property, and not she who supports the home. So this is a big win for women. But something like this, coming so late in the day, What does it say about us?
That we are progressing slowly, but we are. Again, I think it's a very, when we talk about judiciary, it's a perspective of the people sitting there as well, you know. So it's about how they see it, how they perceive it, and how they understand it. And I think although it's too late to get this judgment, the fact that we've got it is a good thing. That, you know, the homemakers have also contributed towards making that wealth, and the lady plays different roles, is what the judge said. That she's a nurse, she's a teacher, she's a cook, and she's done so many things to contribute there. And this has been the demand of the women's group for very long, that, you know, domestic work is not considered as work because it's unpaid labor. And we need to change that, and I'm glad that Madras High Court was able to bring in that perspective in that case.
This is something that is not going to sit well with the men's rights movement, and sadly they see women and feminism as the greatest enemy of all, something that is against the very fabric of Indian society, something that threatens to tear our traditional values apart. And here they are saying that as it is, the laws are skewed in favor of women. But like Rama and I were discussing yesterday, the reality is not how it seems. What would you like to say to that?
The men's rights movement.
So, yeah, I mean, there is this whole conception, or rather perception, I would say, that women misuse laws, and I think that discussion is hyped as compared to the kind of domestic violence or the kind of violence that women go through, because a lot of cases are not even reported. We are only talking of the numbers of the cases that go to the police station or are reported or go up to the court, and there are so many other cases that are not even reported. My opinion here is that any kind of a law can be misused, because it's the attitude and the approach that people have towards how they want to use or misuse a law. It could be a gender specific law, or it could be a gender neutral law, and we've seen laws being misused. So why just the discussion about women related laws? I also see a lot of generalization that happened, and while you did speak of Vaishali Bhagwat's case that very recently happened, I also want to talk about Atul Subhash case that was discussed a lot on all social media platforms. And it's very unfortunate that somebody like Atul Subhash had to end his life, and we have to take this very seriously, because any kind of a relationship and mental health is connected, especially when the relationship goes south. And we do not look at the interlinks that are there between laws, and we do not connect it to the emotional trauma that a man could go through or a woman could go through. But one of the things that I saw happening also is that I'm not on Facebook or Insta, I don't use it anymore, but I'm on LinkedIn, and I saw a lot of discussion about Atul Subhash case happening on LinkedIn, while there is no discussion about Vaishali Bhagwat's case on LinkedIn. And why is that? And the whole discussion that happened was about generalizing how women are bad totally. It's like all women are bad. But that's not true, because for people who have come from a non-legal background, let me tell you that a section like 498A is a cognizable offence, which means it's a serious offence and one has to take cognizance immediately. However, the Supreme Court has relaxed this, so there is no immediate arrest that happens now. There has been a Supreme Court judgment that has come long back, I think in 2012 or 2013, and there is no immediate arrest that happens. Although it's a non-bailable offence, that is, you don't get bail as a right, you get bail in 498A cases very easily these days. So there is no immediate arrest. The other data that we look at, or the argument that is done, is that the conviction rate is low and the acquittal rates are high. I agree. If you go by the NCRB data, That is the data that you see. That is also because this section is non-compoundable, which means that you cannot strike a compromise and withdraw the case. Just as you cannot do it in a rape case, just as you cannot do it in a case of murder. So what eventually happens in the courtroom is that because one person is not, or two people are not just fighting one 498A case. There is a divorce case that is going on, there is a maintenance case that is going on, there is a domestic violence case under the civil law that is going on. So there are multiple cases happening between two people. And when there is a compromise that happens, especially in the divorce cases, one of the settlement term is that all the other cases have to be withdrawn. Now while you can withdraw a civil case, you cannot withdraw a case under 498A. And so the judges told that we want to compromise here, and then the woman has to go to the stand and she has to say that I filed this case in a fit of anger, or I was not in my senses when I filed this case. So it's almost like self-incrimination, and then it results in an acquittal. So let's not get fooled just by the statistics that we see on the NCRB website, because this is what is happening in the court, and that does not get reported. So might as well, and I have, after so many years of being in this area of working on family matters, I've come to a conclusion: why have criminal laws when it comes to family relationship? Because nobody wants to criminalize relationship, and that is not a solution that women are also looking for. From the time the domestic violence civil law has come, our office has not filed one single case of 498A, because I don't see any merit, I don't see any remedy for women in a section like 498A. And so I think we have to take everything with a pinch of salt. So I'm sure, the men's group are looking at it as a violation of their rights, because they don't have a counter section like 498A to file a case against the women. But we also have to consider who has better access to these institutions, who has the money to pay the lawyers, who has the access to go step out of the house and file these cases, who has a better voice to talk about misuse or use of any law, and when we look at those things, then I definitely see that women have far lesser voice as compared to men, because let's agree that we are in a patriarchal society, and it's not just about family matters, it's about anything else that we talk about. Men do have a better voice than women have.
I think when we are talking of men's rights and vis-a-vis what women's rights are there available, I think if we go back to the basics, it most of the times boils down to what is dignity of labor, because we also have not been able to identify housework as billable hours. Never. And even men don't like it when you put it that way. So when I talk to young women and I tell them, when you get married and this is the first apartment that you are buying, you insist that your name is on that, and don't feel guilty about it. It doesn't mean, because we have been conditioned to think that if you are going to ask for something which is of material value, you are not a nice girl. That is not a nice attribute to have, but it is a must attribute to have in today's times. If by choice you are going to stay at home and contribute to building a family, giving a certain balance to the family, where the man goes out and earns, and vice versa. If the man chooses to be at home and become a house husband, and you choose to go out and work, the property that you make together logically has to be 50-50%. It's science, there's science behind it, but we are unable to recognize that as mathematics or science or logic because of, as she said, a very deep-rooted patriarchal mindset that we had of a certain superior gender over an inferior one. And we all are guilty, not just the judiciary, because it also asks yourself the question, how much of what is your belief in dignity of labor? How do you treat others who are maybe in your own mind working less or doing less professional work than you are? It could be our household help. So it's an ecosystem. So you can't just blame one part of the ecosystem and say, this is how the judiciary is looking at it, or this is how the law is looking at it, this is how we are looking at it, and that is the reflection that is coming in judgments and even in the legislation. Most of the times if you speak to the women and say, what are the matrimonial assets that you have, they have also normalized it by saying, it is his property and not mine. It is his property, first house, second house, third house. My name is there on it, but it was just added maybe for convenience. So she also doesn't identify it as her property because she has been conditioned to believe it is not hers. And I think that is where men as well as women both need to understand that it is a organic way in which you build a family, where whatever contribution either of the spouse is doing has value and has equal value. There is no less. Housework is in no manner less. If you put a billable hour to that housework, it has to be exactly the same as the number of hours the man or the woman is putting outside of the house to earn that money. I think that if that mindset change, if we work on, most of the problems will be solved.
I have a question.
Speaking of ownership of assets and recognition of labor, I think the reality is a long way off. There was this particular case in my book which was narrated to me in the first person by the person who was in the eye of the storm. This lady was a Stanford graduate, a South Bombay girl married into a very privileged business family in another city. This was in the 80s, and in those days women of a certain strata were not expected to work, and this is what she said. And after 28 years of marriage, her husband came out as being of a different sexual orientation. So obviously now there was no choice but to end the marriage, and she was told that the only way she is going to get any kind of financial justice, I mean, here is somebody, a Stanford graduate who's never worked a day in her life, and even being told by the father-in-law that, listen, that even the food that you have on your plate is thanks to me, and everything does not belong to your husband either, it belongs to me. So you can't legitimately ask for it. And she was told the only way that she could get anything of any modicum of equality would be to contest the divorce. But then she decided, she was 50 years old, she said, it's a sink or swim moment for me. I could either go ahead and contest the divorce and drag all those people who had been my family for 28 years through the mud, or I could choose to walk with dignity. So she chose to end it by mutual consent, during which, she did not even get a roof over her head and a pittance by way of a settlement. But she said, all right, this is a choice I've made, I'm educated, I have friends, I can take a green card, I can just go abroad and to start working there. At the age of 50, for the first time in her life, she started working. I mean, here was somebody who had, the swankiest of cars and foreign trips at her disposal, having to count pennies. What a tough situation. But she really handled it like a champ, and luckily, she also had friends and she also had contacts. But not every woman is thus privileged. So, what would you like to say about contested divorces and how foul can actually get?
Contested divorces. I would first make a brief comment here that we're talking about men's rights and women's rights. Let me say one thing, that law is very clear. Rights are rights and they're equal for everyone. I think that was taught to us in class 8 civics. Rights are for everyone, whether it is a man or a woman or anybody else. So I'll just start from here. Now coming to contested divorces, yes, they do get ugly. Yes, they do get ugly. Very painful, emotionally straining. All those things are there. But I think overall it needs a holistic approach, so that solutions can be drawn at the earliest, and society should intervene. Now, me being a lawyer, me talking like this, I don't want to get into legal intricacies here, because legal intricacies will get complex. We were discussing Madras High Court decision right now, but I'll just say one thing. There are Supreme Court judgments which differ from that judgment.
Yes.
So again, we are not debating law here. We are sitting here as a group of a society, so that institute of marriage can be discussed. So I think contested divorces, yes, they are painful. So the best way, in a short way, is to try and sort it out amicably, socially, and if not possible, yes, with judicial intervention. I am again saying none of the judges, right from the district level to High Court and the Supreme Court, they want a divorce. That's what I'll just end.